Welcome to another Colors of Prague. This is a redo of the show that I originally put up on Podbean and YouTube, which had very poor sound quality. Actually, the show before that had some noise interference, and the original video didn't have that either. And I can't get Podbean or YouTube looking into it to correct it. So I deleted a few of the recent episodes I did of the Colors of Prague. So I'm redoing them. This is the most recent one. It's easier to do the most recent one. So, new background, as you can see. And the Colors of Prague is a program on Podbean and YouTube. There's a YouTube channel, Colors of Prague, and I have a Facebook page, Colors of Prague, also Lewis Paul, which is who I am. The Colors of Prague, as you can see by the fall brick wall behind me, was an idea I had about 2 years ago during the pandemic, because I really enjoy and love progressive rock music, all kinds. I love lots of different music, but I really like prog. And so I was listening to all this music from all around the world, and it's been brought up to me many times. So what is the Colors of Prague? What does it mean? You know, each country has a flag. I've said this before, but if you're new to the channel, each country has a flag with their colors and their insignia, a lion, stars and the stripes, things like that. So the Colors of Prague is like representing all the progressive music from the U.S., England, Ireland, Italy, Norway, Germany, Mexico, the Ukraine, Russia. There's no political boundaries anywhere. And so I've been covering lots of different varieties of music over the time. And I've also sometimes been centering on one band and just picking a few albums. Because a lot of these bands have been like Yes, like Genesis, like some of the Italian bands. I've been recording for 40 years, 50 years, so it's impossible to do a whole show unless you cherry pick. And I've done a few of those, but coming up in time, there will be shows where I'll try to do something like that, maybe in parts. Part one depends on how many people like it, if anyone likes it. I have an Alan White tribute show coming up. It won't be the next one, it'll be the one afterwards. The next one will be another like this, another array of eclectic music. You know, so we're going to start off with Aeron, and the CD is called the Human Equation. It's from 2004. It's a double CD set. So Aeron is actually Arjen Anthony Lucassen. He's Dutch. He's a multi-instrumentalist, singer, composer, and someone apparently likes to create, for lack of a better word, rock operas, concept albums, and often his music contains themes of a fantastical nature. Humankind or man's ability to coexist with a world in which things are mechanical or sort of science fiction theme, science fact or fantasy. This stuff is kind of heavy. It's sort of like how science fiction events in the real world can affect the human race. Yeah, I know it's pretty heavy stuff, but most rock operas and concept albums are in one way or another. Broadly, one can call his music progressive metal. He's been in and still is in other bands that play metal, prog metal, and progressive metal. This is their sixth album, The Human Equation, as Ayreon. And there are other things going on here, like space rock, psychedelic music, symphonic, progressive sounds. It's a massive story, over 20 songs, and over 100 minutes long, and it features a wide variety of guest artists like Ken Hensley of Uriah Heep, Oliver Wakeman, Martin Alford of IQ and Jadis. And in the large cast of singers and actors, we have members of Opeth, Savior Machine, and even James LaBrie from Dream Theater. So what's this one about, really? It's about a man lies in a coma in a hospital, and the music and all the guest stars with vocal and singing parts represent his subconscious mind trying to figure out how he got there in the hospital in a coma and how he can get out. Yeah, it's pretty heavy stuff. I personally am not a huge fan of the band, but I respect what he's doing. I have a few Aeron recordings of this one. This is, if you want to try something, I would recommend the Human Equation because it gives you a good idea where they're at. It's not too heavy. It's kind of mind-boggling in its attempt to deal with this theme, but it's quite interesting. Next, I'm going on to Big Big Train. I might have mentioned them before. This is called the Underfall Yard. Formed in England in the early 90s, the Big Big Train lineup went through quite a few changes, as well as their musical sound had changed. By 2009, Nick DiVirgilio, percussionist and singer, joined. He's a journeyman in the world of contemporary progressive music. Everyone knows Nick. He's played with numerous bands as a singer as well. He was in Spock's Beard for a while. Still is. He comes and goes. A lot of the Spock's Beard alumni come and go. He's also well known. He appeared on the last Genesis studio album, Calling All Stations, as a drummer. And he joined Big Big Train as well as David Longdon, who actually auditioned to be Genesis singer for Calling All Stations, replacing Phil Collins at the time. But Ray Wilson, I believe, got that position. And it's funny because Ray's voice and David Longdon's voice weren't that similar. Actually, I personally would have thought David Longdon would have been a better pick, but it's fine. He got the gig in Big Big Train. So beside having a fine voice that sometimes uncannily resembles Peter Gabriel and at times Phil Collins, separately of course, Longdon also played a variety of folk instruments like mandolin and dulcimer. But since Big Big Train were without a guitarist around the time of the Underfall Yard, Dave Gregory of XTC stepped in with assistance from Francis Dunnery on guitars. And around this time, Francis Dunnery, for those who follow Robert Plant's solo studio work, Francis Dunnery was doing some solo material as well as playing with Robert Plant. Yet another concept album. The Underfall Yard seems to be a show. This seems to be a show filled with them. The Underfall Yard is about the industrial decline and collapse of the United Kingdom, particularly rail yards, railroads, and the rusting away of the old way of life. You know, people forget that trains, freight trains, passenger trains, not only were they moving people, they were moving things. You know, and as the industrial age went on, there were other ways and other forms of moving that stuff, and it's a rusting away of the old life. It's quite you think I'm kidding? One tune is titled Victorian Brickwork. I mean, this is really quite an interesting concept. And for sure, Big Big Train has their own sound, a progressive stew of English folk, rock, and something else. And the comparison sometimes to early Genesis, I would not be far off the mark. David Longdon managed to complete Welcome to the Planet in 2022 before succumbing to an injury that took place at his home. Shortly before the release of the CD album, and he passed away. Long did recorded 7 studio albums and 4 live albums with the band. I quite like Big Big Train. This is a 2 CD set because it's quite a quite a heavy thing they tackle. And the Big Big Train, their stuff is usually released on English Electric Recordings, RSK Entertainment, which is Big Big Train's label. That their remastered releases in the last 2 years, they've been remastering and remixing some material. Always come with really nice liner notes with lyrics and who played what and what song. There's always some additional guests here and there, as well as it's quite nicely done. So you have some liner notes, and the CDs are in these little pockets here. So, personal favorite of mine, Big Big Train. Next on the roll call is Caravan. So Caravan is from 1968. This is their debut CD. Well, a remastered version of their debut CD. Formed in 1968, in Canterbury in the UK, by guitarist singer Pi Hastings, keyboardist Dave Sinclair, bass player and singer Richard Sinclair, and drummer Rich Coughlin, that came along around the same time as Soft Machine and Gong, and are referred to as one of the originators of the Canterbury sound, or the Canterbury scene. Caravan's first album, this one, is an uneasy blend of psychedelia, jazz, pop, and more. It's not quite progressive. They would get there in other recordings. They also like playing around with, in subsequent recordings, as they got more proggy, but still retaining that psychedelic sound, they would have weird album titles and song titles. Definitely risque. How they got away with this stuff is like, If I Could Do It Again, I'd Do It All Over You in 1970. In the Land of Gray and Pink in 71. Sexually suggestive titles at the least, but they're known for lots of things. So this Caravan CD on the Verve Forecast label, which was recently done in 2002, 20 years ago. But still, you have the original mono mix of the first album, released in 68 again, a stereo mix, and a bonus track. There was a single. So probably not the best place to start your Caravan Prog adventure, but if you were interested, or if you already liked the band, it must have everything. I'm interested in what they sounded like when they first started out. This is quite nice. From there, we're going to jump to something entirely different. Klaus Schultz, Deux, Arrakis, Dune Arrakis, 2022. It's a recent release. Klaus Schultz is a pioneer of electronic music. Klaus was a member of Tangerine Dream as their drummer, and he played electronics. He appears on Electronic Meditation, the first album in 1970. In 2016, a release titled Ultima Thule, also a Tangerine Dream album, containing some of Tangerine Dream's pop progressive roots, with the addition of 2 singles where Klaus was still in the band, and the band was called at the time, before Tangerine Dream, The Ones. Yes, The Ones. They're very psychedelic, and less so on the electronic side. But after they were The Ones, they were Tangerine Dream. After leaving Tangerine Dream, Klaus Schultz joined forces with Manuel Gottsting on guitars and electronics and vocals, and Harmut Enke on bass for Ashra Temple. It was another project of his. They were a much more experimental and spacey band that recorded a variety of live albums and different incarnations. there's only officially 7 studio Ashra Temple albums in 30 years. And as a solo artist, I don't know, is there such a thing? He often would work with Manuel Gostring. Klaus Schultz has reportedly recorded about 60 studio albums, studio recordings, and the occasional live one. Sometimes some of these were soundtracks for films, which makes sense. In recent years, he's often collaborated with ex-Dead Cat Dance vocalist Lisa Gerrard on a number of albums and live appearances. And Lisa Gerrard did those ethereal vocals for post-Dead Cat Dance, the band, for films such as Gladiator. And I believe she was nominated and possibly won, I'm not quite sure, an Academy Award. So Doing Arrakis is the last recording he did before he passed in 2022, which is just before its release. So it opens up, nice gatefold CD here. Here's that Dune thing going on there. Long a fan of Frank Herbert's book Dune and the Frank Herbert penned subsequent books. This is Klaus Schultz's electronic interpretation of some chapters. The mix done by him is an intriguing blend of electronics, keyboards, percussion, and an occasional otherworldly sounding cello. There's also some barely discernible female vocals going on, but this is a really terrific recording. Strangely bringing to mind classic Tangerine Dream albums like Zeet from '72 and Phaedra from 1974, both of which Klaus Schultz did not appear on, but it quite brings to mind that sound. Maybe Klaus was coming full circle. He also thanks Hans Zimmer, the composer and musician, on this recording. So I guess he had prepared this thank you section, special thanks, before he had passed. And Hans Zimmer quite was well aware of Klaus Schultz. Some of Klaus's sounds appear in some of Hans Zimmer soundtrack work. The percussion and electronic sounds that he uses to compose is quite there. And also Hans did that great Dune soundtrack for the recent remake. So Klaus thanks Hans, who might have helped him or been an inspiration of his if he inspired him. Anyway, quite a nice electronic recording. On the prog end, yes, because there's a lot of connections to progressive music with electronic sounds. So I highly recommend that. So I spoke of Aeron, the Big Train, Caravan, and Klaus Schultz today. And again, this is the new improved sound. And thank you for watching. I'll be back shortly with a redo of another show or an entirely new show of eclectic and prog music. And 2 shows down the line, I'll be talking about some of Alan White's music as a percussionist. You know, we all know he was with Yes for a long time, but he's done other music, has been in other bands before, after, and during. He recently passed away in recent months. So, thank you for watching. Enjoy your day.